Hi, everyone. We're going to give it a moment for folks to start trickling in, and then we'll begin. All right. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our HHH Made This How We Got It Built case study series. My name is Ariana Jukes. I'm the Public Affairs Manager here at SCAMP, and we're so excited for you to join us for our second round of these workshops that we're holding. So just to give you a little bit of background, this is a recurring web series that seeks to demystify the development process by providing firsthand insights from developer members. This year, we're highlighting projects that use HHH funds to show folks the tangible results of this funding source. Today, we'll be learning about the Pointe On Vermont by EAH Housing. And to do that, we'll be hearing from Steven Spielberg, Vice President of Real Estate at EAH, Tim Kohler, the Director of Permanent Supportive Housing, and Lisa Haddon, Senior Project Manager at EAH Housing. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to the folks. If you have questions during this, please feel free to add them into the Q&A box. And just know that after this, the slides and the recording will be sent to all of you. And with that, take it away. Thanks.
Thanks, Ariana. And thank you all for joining us. We are very excited and proud to present the Pointe on Vermont to you today. I'm going to turn off my camera and share my screen and go ahead and present some slides to you. So today we're going to give you a little background on EAH Housing and the project team for Pointe on Vermont. And then we'll take you through the project and some of the areas of the development that presented particular challenges and opportunities. Then we'll talk about a few lessons learned through the process and then allow some time for your questions. So again, thank you for that introduction, Ariana. I am Steve Spielberg, Vice President of Real Estate Development for EAH. And with me today is Lisa Haddon, Senior Project Manager that worked on completing the Pointe on Vermont, and Tim Kohler, Director of Supportive Services for EAH Housing. EAH is a 54-year-old mission-driven, nonprofit, affordable housing developer and property manager. We were founded in Northern California in 1968, and we've since expanded throughout most of California and Hawaii. Our communities serve working families, seniors, veterans, formerly homeless, transition-age youth, and other special needs populations. EAH manages all of our own properties, and we also do property management for other owners, which now includes over 2,800 units in the LA area alone. With the HHH program being in the news quite a bit the past few months, we wanted to highlight how the program has positively impacted our ability to create new supportive housing opportunities in the city of Los Angeles. The Pointe on Vermont opened its doors on March 23rd, 2021. Pointe on La Brea is currently in construction, and by July 2023, will end homelessness for 49 individuals currently living on the streets. Our new development at 4507 Main will break ground this spring and eventually provide homes to 57 homeless and low-income families. And at 87th and Western, we're partnering with Innovative Housing Opportunities to create 160 units, which will integrate unhoused and low-income members of the community. For Pointe on Vermont, we partnered with A to Z Enterprises as a local development partner. FSY Architects designed the building. Construction was completed by United Building Company, and we're actively working with St. Joseph Center as the service provider for formerly homeless residents. Pointe on Vermont started out as a partnership between EAH and a local partner who had the vision of taking a property their family had owned for years and using it to help transform the area and the lives of the people in the neighborhood. The partnership presented the opportunity for a landowner with no development experience to learn the development process while doing good for the community in which they had lived and worked for years. For EAH, the opportunity allowed us to further our mission of housing low-income families and vulnerable individuals, mentor a local like-minded organization, and lower our own risk as the family continued to own and operate the existing uses on the land until shortly before construction started. We originally envisioned the project as housing for low-income families and applied for funding through the Los Angeles Housing Department as such. Upon seeing the self-scores of the other applicants, we quickly realized that it would be tough to get the project funded as conceived. As luck would have it, the voters of Los Angeles had recently passed Measure HHH, and as an applicant to the Housing Department's managed pipeline, we were offered the opportunity to be part of round 0 of the HHH program. Given the good news and aligning with both organizations' missions, we quickly pivoted to developing a 100% homeless project to fit within the funding parameters of the new HHH program. While HHH presented an opportunity to have Pointe on Vermont move very quickly through the funding process and start construction, we eventually learned that the community would not support 100% homeless development at this location. Through rigorous engagement, meeting with the community leaders, groups, and politicians, the project morphed into what eventually got funded and built, which now includes 25 units for formerly homeless, 24 low-income families, ground floor retail, a meeting space available to the local community, and a recording studio that will offer music lessons to low-income youth. While new developments integrating 50% homeless with 50% low-income individuals and families is becoming more commonplace, at the time, we were not sure how the community would function in reality. In a few minutes, Tim Kohler will share with you more about that aspect of the project, but thus far, we've been very happy with the results. As you can see, in addition to HHH, we received 2 other sources of funding from City of Los Angeles, money from the county, tax credits, tax-exempt bonds, a traditional bank construction loan and perm financing, as well as project-based rental subsidy through the county's Department of Health Services. One challenge with switching from 100% homeless project to 50% was the loss of half of the potential HHH funding. Another unusual circumstance was that in applying to the county, we were eligible for general affordable funding as well as mental health specific dollars. But the community input prevented us from securing dollars that some felt would indicate a change in the target population. Also, after receiving competitive financing through LAHD's managed pipeline, the project was still short, and after many months of discussion, was fortunate enough to secure some former CRA funds through the Housing Department. Another interesting thing about the financing for the project is the source of the rental subsidy. Pointe on Vermont is one of the last projects to receive project-based rental assistance through the county's Department of Health Services. The county actually tried to withdraw their commitment at one point, but in the end, we're very happy that they did move forward with the subsidy, and their funding is successfully helping our formerly homeless residents to pay their rent. Another interesting twist on this project was that we originally entitled it with AB 744 to take advantage of parking reductions, but once entitled, we found out that the rents would need to be restricted far below those required by the tax credit committee. We therefore ended up entitling the site a second time, taking advantage of the TOC program and enabling the project to achieve the density, parking, and rents needed for feasibility. I'm now going to turn it over to Lisa Haddon, who will tell you about her experience with the construction process.
Thank you, Stephen. Again, I will introduce myself. I am Lisa Haddon. I am the Senior Project Manager who was responsible for getting this development constructed. So we always start off with our construction selection process. Success of getting your development completed will definitely depend on choosing the right general contractor. For the Pointe on Vermont, we issued an RFP for GC bids. When doing so, we generally receive 3 to 5 bids, as was the case with Pointe On Vermont. Upon receipt of the bids, myself, along with our construction manager, will complete an analysis of all bids. We will then choose 2 to 3 GCs to interview. After that process was completed, we awarded the contract to United Building Company, also known as UBC. Demo. Our development site consisted of 1 single-family home and several storefront retail spaces. Although demo was delayed due to noticing adjacent property owners, our GC was instrumental in getting this process completed. COVID. The development started construction August 2019, prior to the start of the pandemic. By the time the pandemic hit, we were 7 months into construction. We were very fortunate that we experienced only minimal shutdowns due to COVID positive test results. We were shut down 2 times for 1 day each time. NAC, which is the Neutral Accessibility Expert. The NAC process came about as a result of the City of Los Angeles being sued by HUD for its accessibility guidelines and practices, which involved approval of developments. Our development hires an accessibility expert. The city has an accessibility expert on staff. They both sign off on the development upon its completion. After their approval, the third-party expert, NAC, inspects the development and prepares a report outlining any deficiencies noted during inspection. We anticipated the NAC inspection, to take 1 day, when it actually took 3 days. The report was issued approximately 2 weeks after the last day of inspection. The NAC inspection resulted in a 242-page report noting 110 accessibility deficiencies. While that may seem quite large, we are hearing in the industry that our report was one of the best, as other developments were getting reports as large as 1,000 pages. Through the process, we made corrections and were re-inspected by the NAC expert. This happened a total of 3 additional times. The development received the temporary certificate of occupancy March 22nd, 2021, but was not able to obtain the final certificate of occupancy until December 28th, 2021, which was 9 months later. And we received that final certificate of occupancy after we had made all of our corrections based on the NAC inspections, and NAC gave us our final approval for our accessibility. Our GC, UBC, was very diligent in getting that done. Through making the necessary corrections to cure the deficiencies and being persistent on their follow-up, the development was able to obtain C of O prior to the anticipated timeline. Other developments that started the NAC process prior to our development had still not received their final C of O. UBC was very instrumental in getting the development through this process. I can't say it enough, but choose your GC wisely. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Tim Kohler, who is our Director of Permanent Supportive Housing.
Thank you, Lisa. Now that the easy work is done, let's talk about how we operate this beautiful property. So as outlined earlier, Pointe On Vermont is a mixed community serving 24 general affordable families and 25 permanent supportive housing units for individuals through referrals from the LA County Coordinated Entry System. EAH began the conversation in collaboration with St. Joseph Center early in the pre-development phase, which I believe made the lease up and ongoing operations such a success. As many of you may know or are finding out that have properties like this, site level participation, site level partnerships and collaboration are critical to operating a successful community. The site team meets once per week to review rents, incidents, and activities, and most importantly, who will follow up and what the outcome of that follow-up was. All site staff are trained in trauma-informed care, housing first, and harm reduction, which are evidence-based best practices in permanent supportive housing. COVID is a factor for us, as it has been for everybody these last few years. And most of the community-based activities have been minimized. However, the case management and resident services provided has been an essential activity. And so we continued one-on-one outreach and interventions as needed. During the lease-up period, the site team worked together and we spaced the move-ins and the lease signings to minimize putting too many folks together at the same time. And community events and activities will resume now that COVID is waning. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we continue to move out. St. Joseph Center provides 2 on-site case managers, and EAH provides 1 resident service coordinator. Case management provides one-on-one and housing support, groups and referrals, and for the permanent supportive housing residents, kind of the micro approach. And EAH resident service coordinators provides activities, food pantry referrals, and housing supports for all residents. Although during the pandemic, we weren't able to get the whole community together as often as possible as we'd like to, we found that through small activities and opportunities for folks to see each other and engage, we've been able to do that on a limited basis. Housing retention, we just celebrated 1 year of being leased up, and we've had 3 people move out negatively. 2 general affordable units vacated to move to another location on their own choice. And we've had 1 permanent supportive housing eviction in this last year. So, we're about 95% retention rate for the first year, which is exceptional. Property management lives on site and the community is secured and has controlled access. I'm certainly happy to answer questions, as I know that there will be some, but for now, let me send it back over to Stephen.
Thanks, Tim, and thank you, Lisa, as well. So to wrap things up for our presentation, we wanted to present a few of our lessons learned. And one of the biggest ones is to work with the community early to understand their needs and desires. We want to be good neighbors from initial planning through construction to managing the property for years and years. So good upfront communication and community engagement is key. In this case, it could have saved Pointe on Vermont a lot of time and heartache, switching populations, adding retail and other community benefits to the property, understanding the populations that the community would welcome, et cetera, et cetera. Another lesson is to understand the funding sources required to complete the project, its limitations, and what makes a project competitive. Unfortunately, while we would love to work with communities to understand their greatest needs and desires and then design a building to meet that, the funding does not frequently line up that way. For Pointe on Vermont, the community would have welcomed the family affordable building we originally envisioned. However, the funding available did not align with those goals. On the construction side, if you're working in the city of Los Angeles, coordinate early with the city and the various accessibility consultants needed to finalize the project. As we and many of our colleagues have found out these past several years, this presents one of the biggest slowdowns for affordable housing in the city of Los Angeles. And one of the most important things for maintaining and managing a well-operating property where the residents can thrive is to form a good relationship with your service partner and make sure that the staffing and budgeting is there for all of the residents' needs. In the end, we're very proud of what we built, and we're particularly happy to see how successfully both our low-income and formerly homeless residents have integrated into this community and become good neighbors with each other. So thank you again for joining us today. Before we take your questions, we'd like to show you a 2-minute video that the County of LA created to showcase the Pointe on Vermont and how their funding played a part in its development. Give me just a second and I will share that video.
I was living on the streets for like 12 or 13 years. Living on the streets, there's no barrier, you know, there's no kind of structure. You don't have no priorities as far as which way you're going. I moved in my apartment 3 weeks ago, and it's been great ever since. Music to my ass.
The goal of the Pointe On Vermont is to house these homeless individuals as well as provide them stability in their life so that they don't have to go back to the streets. The Pointe On Vermont was funded from a variety of funding sources, one of which was LA County Development Authority, in which they provided $1.5 million towards the funding of this building. 25 of the units are set aside for homeless individuals. We have 2 case managers, 1 mental health specialist, and a resource coordinator on site here at the project.
The first time I turned them keys, it was like pleasure. Like blessings. Blessings was flowing. I had to sit here and just look around.
Rashad, these are your keys. We're gonna go up and have you go into your unit, okay?
Okay. My name is Rashad Raleigh, and I experienced homelessness for 4 years. I can put this anywhere I want.
Yes.
This unit is a new direction for me, it is. This looks like the future of something that I would like to be a part of. Wow, this is crazy.
So thanks again, everyone. We will now look forward to answering any questions that you may have.
So there are a few questions in the chat box. One from Jane Demian. Her question is, can you please describe if these projects include city/county owned property? The Pointe on Vermont was not a city or county owned land. It was our development partner. Her family had owned this property for quite some time. Next question is also from Jane. Could you please explain if these developments have deed restricted covenants of 55 years for low income /homeless housing? And that is correct. This property is deed restricted. The next question is from Lisa. Any complaints/nuisance issues as a result of the tenants mix? How were these dealt with? Was ground floor retail space leased, and what business?
There's a lot of questions in there. So I'll handle the community question. You could talk about the retail space. So we address and discuss issues and concerns immediately. I think that's key to any healthy community, and not to react to situations, but to respond to them and create an opportunity for folks to build relationships, the staff, the residents to the residents. And I think that's critical and ongoing, really focusing on creating a community and addressing behaviors and concerns as they arise as a team. And we've been very successful with St. Joseph Center.
As far as the ground floor retail space, what we have over on that side, we have the area for the recording studio. We also have a community serving conference room, which means that conference room is available to the community for their use. And we also have retail space. Right now, we are in negotiations with a particular lessee who wants to take over all of that space. And so I'm not at liberty to say who they are, but right now it's a very promising prospect. Next question is from Katie Fisher. Regarding the initial lease up, did any potential family unit residents express concern about living with PSH household? If so, how did we get comfortable with that?
I'm sorry, I was reading the chat. Was that a question for me? Could you ask it again?
That's a question for you. So Did any potential family unit residents express concerns about living with PSH households?
Yeah, I think that's always a concern when we have mixed populations, and it really deals with the stigma of homelessness and mental health. And so we do a really good job of really engaging folks around discussions about those concerns. And, you know, not to say that we're going to eliminate everybody's concerns or fears, but we do a really good job of setting the tone for what the interactions need to be at the community level. So we've been very, very successful at that.
Okay, the next question is from Anthony. This one is for you, Stephen. It says, out of your development team, who led the community engagement effort? Can you share how the process looked?
Sure. So I led that with our development partner, A to Z Enterprises. Antonia Feemster was my partner from their side. And as I mentioned, that was really one of our lessons learned. So our community engagement process has changed a lot since the initial stages of Pointe On Vermont. We initially started down the road of applying for the financing before doing the community engagement, which is something that we won't or are not doing anymore. But in this case, we ran into the roadblocks as we move forward, and our community engagement involved many different things, including meeting with individuals in the community, meeting with small groups within the community, meeting with individual business owners within the community. We hosted a community-wide event at the council members' South LA office, very close to the property, their South LA office. We had a big community meeting with the architect to take community input from the community. We met directly with the council member and his staff multiple times. So in the end, we really did touch everyone in the community that was interested in giving input. Were we to do it over again, we would have started that right from the very beginning and started with smaller groups and continued to expand to the whole community.
Thank you, Stephen. The next question is from Alexander, which is what criteria you use for sending invitations for bid for a GC. So we have a construction manager that we work with, and he's been in the industry in LA for a very long time. And so we look to him for recommendations on our GCs. And the second part of that question is how to join the pool of trustworthy GCs. So you could reach out to Stephen or myself, and we will be more than happy to set some time aside to have that discussion with you.
I'll throw on one other thing to that, you know, I think for years and years, we've worked with a relatively small pool of general contractors around the LA area that have experience doing affordable housing, which especially in the city of LA, we find important because there is a lot of regulation that you need to deal with and understand. One thing that we're currently trying to do is really expand that pool beyond the traditional number. We're trying to really get diversity, equity, and inclusion into our hiring practices. I think it's really tough to break into this industry in particular because of all the regulation, but we're actively now taking more than just 3 bids on a project, so we can include other general contractors in that process.
Our next question is from Caroline, who says, thank you, Lisa and the EAH team. And her question is, how was the ground floor retail recording studio build out funded? And does EAH also do the property management for these spaces? So the ground floor retail, the retail space is core and shell, in that tenant will be responsible for tenant improvements. There's also a management office for our development partner, A to Z. That was fully built out. with funding from our different sources. And the recording studio will be funded from the GC and our development partner.
I'll throw in a little quirk too, since it sounds like you're looking for specifics, is that a nuance of the tax credit program is that if you're in a qualified census tract and building for the low income community, that the tax credits can cover the costs. So between our construction and perm loans and the tax credits, we were able to cover the core and shell of the ground floor that Lisa mentioned.
And as far as the property management for these spaces, that
Good
go
question.
ahead.
I think traditionally we would manage the retail space, and the rents generated from the retail space would be part of the property management responsibilities.
Why did the county, the next question is from Mari, why did the county try to pull their funds?
You know, you'd have to ask the county, but I believe that the county is very thin on the Department of Health Services vouchers, and they, I do not believe anymore, actually for some time, have been issuing project-based commitments. They're still doing tenant-based rental subsidy, but at the time they were trying to, it's very expensive for the county in this, so they were trying to get out of that. They pushed us towards applying for Section 8 with the Housing Authority of the City of Los Angeles, which would have been in direct competition with another one of our projects. And we didn't want to have to choose between one of our projects getting vouchers and another one. And so luckily we were able to talk them into honoring that commitment for Pointe On Vermont.
The next question is, please describe your experience with CES.
We don't have enough time. So fortunately, I think the county realizes that the coordinated entry system, and for those of you who don't know what that is, please Google it, is not that coordinated. And so for all of the permit supportive housing that's funded in every community, there needs to be a coordinated entry system. It is a McKinley-Vento Act HUD requirement for every community to have that. Each community could do it a little differently. The challenge, obviously, through COVID was that folks were on the streets, or they were in project turnkey situations, and then needing documents for the lease up and things like that were really challenging during COVID. But the trick is constant communication with whatever entity or whatever SPA that you're working in, with that whoever is managing the coordinated entry system matches, working with LASA and making sure that wherever there's pinch points, that we're discussing those and trying to work through that. It's many are community-based organizations that are physically managing folks through the coordinated entry system. And so, making sure that we're connected to those folks, having conversations, talking about challenges or, unnecessarily overdue vacancies, that sort of thing. But it's something that has to be managed and watched constantly.
Next question was, what kind of subsidy was used to make the family units affordable? PBVs, or were the PBVs only for the formerly unhoused? So
yeah, as I mentioned, it's not actually PBVs. Normally, when we say PBV, that's project-based voucher, and it really refers to a HUD Section 8 voucher. These were through the county's Department of Health Services, but yes, those vouchers are specifically for the formerly homeless units. The low-income individuals and families living at this property pay around 60% of their income as rent, and that there's no, the project doesn't receive any additional subsidy for their rent.
The next question was the general contractor on the project and who was the general contractor? General contractor was United Building Company, UBC, and the interior design was done by Mass Build. Next question was, why the need for so many funding sources?
Well, that was actually, I alluded to in my presentation, but didn't want to go into detail. Essentially, when we pivoted to the HHH program, there would have been enough money to go ahead and apply for tax credits as a 100% homeless project, but the community didn't want a 100% homeless project. And so switching to having HHH only fund 50% of the units, it left a pretty significant gap in the funding. And so we had to go to the county. And as Lisa had mentioned, I think in the video, that the county had funded 1.5 million. We were actually eligible for about 3 million, but the other 1.5 would have been mental health specific funding. And the community didn't want or would have perceived that as a change in population to get that additional $1.5 million. And so we applied to the housing department and won a competitive 1.7 million. And through all of those processes, took a lot of time, and materials and costs escalated. And this is really an issue that's kind of plagues almost all the affordable housing that I'm aware of, at least the ones in major metropolitan areas like LA, that we apply for source after source after source. And by the time you're getting close to construction, the prices have gone way up and other things have changed in different funding regulations and whatnot. And so that left us with a gap that we had to basically beg and plead with the city of LA, and they found some extra redevelopment money that they put into this project. Without that, it would have just continued to stall until we could have scrapped it together through state sources or private, like the AHP program.
Our next question is from Sally, who feels that Katie's question about potential tenant families and their concerns about living with previously homeless folks wasn't fully addressed. How do you bring these residents together to overcome those fears?
Yeah. Well, the challenge of COVID certainly has been a factor in being able to pull the whole community together and have discussions and town hall meetings and things like that. So what we do is we work individually. As if any particular resident brings up a concern or needs to address something or would like to address something, we have to do it on an individualized basis. And so the team there works very closely with each other and with the residents to try to help support and educate and mediate any kind of ongoing neighbor issues, which occur in every property. Anybody that's doing this business knows that it's not just PSH, but regular properties have issues as well. And so just being responsive and communicating clearly and working with folks and addressing their concerns immediately. We've done very, very well. I mean, most of the behaviors that we've had really relate to folks from outside of the property, either trying to get into the spaces or messing with people's cars or things like that. We've had no issues or incidents that were significant within the property between residents.
Anthony wants to know, could you share the total cost of the project and the cost to build a unit? So yes, the total cost of the project was approximately 24.8 million. And the per unit cost is 496,000.
Well, Lisa, there's some questions over in the chat as well. I don't know if you're able to see those, but there was a question about how does one ensure safety? And this is from Destiny. How does one ensure safety for the services property management staff with this type of population? Any safety concerns given the people they serve? Well, as I just stated, or most times our concern are with folks from outside of the community getting in unauthorized. And so the property is key fob access only for residents. The elevator's key fob access only. And the staff are there, 5 days a week. Property management lives on site. And although there's always, in any property type, there's always a concern for safety, and folks need to be trained for escalation and understanding the population that they're working with. And again, addressing behaviors or incidents immediately is really key to managing the community.
I didn't go to the chat. I was only monitoring the questions in the Q&A. Sally made a very good point, and she says she thinks that Stephen meant, and she's correct, that the family apartment rents were set to be affordable to folks at 60% of the area median income, not the residents pay 60% of their income.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you for correcting.
Yeah, yes.
Residents pay approximately 30% of their income, not 60.
Yeah.
And our very own Verna Cosby Smith, she said, what kind of accessibility issues were raised in the 300+ page report prepared after the city and developers consultant had inspected and signed off on accessibility compliance? So one of the major things that we found was that the accessibility expert NAC had quoted outdated code. And so when we address the correct code, our 110 deficiencies greatly were decreased. There were things of the elevator button was 1/8 of an inch off. We had to fix it. When we looked at the items that were on the report, they weren't major, but still we had to address them. One of the things that we were unable to address, but we still received final sign off, was the laundry facilities. And we have an accessibility washer and dryer on each floor, but not the one that we have doesn't address code. And so we just had to write a letter that when that washer and dryer is manufactured, we will replace what we have. This question is to me. It says, on your site, there is only one generic option, contact us. Is there a better way to get in touch with you and your staff via email? Yes, there's the last slide of the presentation that
You
has,
throw up the last slide again, so they have our email.
Yeah, and I'll send out the slide deck too to all who came today to have the information for the folks from EAH.
And we're all more than happy to chat or talk to anybody about any aspect of what we do, or supportive housing or development or ongoing operations. So feel free to reach out to me or anyone else on the team.
and I think that there's another question that says, how did you engage the community in the planning and construction process? As far as during the construction process, the community did not have a problem in stopping by, saying, hey, I live here, so we're always more than happy to have a conversation with them when they show up. They also were very vocal in being able to submit an application when the application process was open. And so we provided flyers at the site so that if anyone showed up, if anyone showed up, that we would have that information for them so that they would know when the application process was open, when the application was open, and that they could get an application submitted, whether it be online or through a physical application. There's some people who just don't have access to a computer. So we also had that option to bring a physical application. We also did a tour with the neighborhood, one of the neighborhood councils, and to get them acclimated to what we were doing, what we were building, what population we were going to serve, and what was going to happen with the retail space.
Lisa, you made me think of a question, if I can ask a question, because I don't remember this. It's been so long ago, but for the 24 general affordable units, how many applications did we get when we first opened the window?
It was over 5,000.
For
So
24
needless to
units?
say, we have a pretty healthy wait list.
Wow.
Yeah, for 24 units. That's a lot. And somebody also wrote, Mike wrote, sorry if I missed this. You mentioned the land was owned by your development partner. What can you, it moved.
Sorry, let me finish that for you. So if I missed this, you mentioned the land was owned by your development partner. What can you tell us about that deal? Are you leasing the land from them or through OPEX, or is there some form of co-ownership?
So if you understand how a traditional tax credit partnership works, which I'm not going to go into, essentially our development partner owned the land right up until we started construction. And when we closed on all of our financing, the partnership acquired the land from them. And the partner actually still was a partner in our partnership. So the tax credit partnership now owns the land. The tax credit partner owns 99.99% of the project, and the general partner is 0.01% of the project. And of that general partnership, A to Z Enterprises is still has their portion of our partnership. I hope that answered it. I know it's not super clear unless you really understand how tax credit partnerships work, though.
Mike says, perfect, thanks.
Okay.
And we're going to take one last question, and that is, how long did it take to apply and get a LIHTC award? Get award based on low income ranking versus unhoused. Did you get an award based on low income ranking versus unhoused? And so it's far more complicated than that. Low income versus unhoused. It's a scoring application. There's several different categories, and you get points based on if you meet the criteria in that category. So when you're applying for a low income housing tax credit, they're all low income, and you get more. You get points in the category if they're homeless. It's a very detailed point system, and there's categories there's several categories, and you meet these categories, you get so many points.
I'm going to take a stab at the answer also, because I'm wondering if maybe the person that asked the question was thinking 9% tax credits. This was a 4% tax credit project paired with tax exempt bonds. And things have changed with that program. The bond program has become competitive, but when we applied, it was a non-competitive program, and you did not need to specify a particular population type like the 9% program. So a 9% program, you would have had to say if it was a low-income family project or a special needs project. In this case, we didn't have to specify. We applied one time and got our award.
Great. Well, a round of applause for the team at EAH. Thank you so much for giving us this background towards building the Pointe on Vermont, beautiful community that you've created. And I just want a reminder to everyone that the recording and the slide deck will be sent out. And we look forward to seeing you at our next HHH Built This webinar. Thanks again, y'all.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Scam, for inviting us and for everyone for joining us today.
Definitely. Take care.
All right, thank you.